by if you could tell our listeners a little bit about what the work is that you actually do.
Okay, so what I'm doing is grabbing a microscope, putting a camera on it, and going out and sampling nature and showing people who might pass by my YouTube channel what's out there that they can't see.
So you had
that's what it boils down to.
Yeah, you had a very successful career as a sound engineer and a music producer. What led to you becoming interested in microscopy?
Well, it's probably the other way around. I started when I was a boy with a microscope that I got for Christmas when I was 11 or 12, something like that. I loved it. It was awesome. But by the time I left school, I ended up going a different way. But I did have a lab job for a while. I was doing water testing, or chemical testing, related to environmental protection. So certain types of water needed to be monitored, and that's what I was doing. But there was no microscope there, which was what I was really wanted to do and go to uni and study. But one thing led to another. My other passion was audio and music as well as a teenager. That sort of came to the fore, and through a set of coincidences and meetings, the path opened up and I took to it. And good things came from it. So that's essentially what happened. And then it was a few years ago, I came back to the microscope because I've got a daughter now. And one school holiday, we went to the library and they had a STEM section, so for science, technology and stuff. So you could build a radio or do little things like that. And one was a microscope kit. So I decided to get that, and that sort of brought back all that childhood passion. And it just came flooding back, and the rest is history.
Now, you're famous for studying and filming Protist.
Okay, yep.
Tell us a little bit about what a protest actually is.
Okay, so, well, in a nutshell, just the book definition is basically anything that is not an animal or a plant or a fungus or a bacteria or a virus. So, and they're generally called protists. So they were the first eukaryotic cells that came into being on the planet millions and millions and millions and millions of years ago. But they're still here with us today, and the kind of cell that evolved called a eukaryotic cell, it basically it's distinct from bacteria or some of the cyanobacteria in that it has specific organelles inside the cell. So it has mitochondria, it'll have a nucleus where the DNA is organized in a single location, and then a whole bunch of other specific little organelles that have functions. So quite a complicated cell appeared, and they were generally called the protists, but most people would call them algae or protozoa is what people would mostly know them as.
Okay, now we're going to talk about the Blackmagic cameras in a moment, but before you had the Blackmagic cameras, how did you used to go about capturing this on film?
Well, I was using my iPhone for economic reasons, really. I had a camera, so why not use it? So I started using the iPhone on the library microscope. It was just like a little kid's sort of microscope, and I had it clamped onto a microphone stand with the camera pointing down the eyepiece, and that's how it kind of started. Because when I was younger, I didn't have cameras or anything like that, so I had notebooks and sketch pads. And I'd draw what I was seeing. So taking photographs and film really, because I like to keep the time angle in. It's probably from the music side of things, because time is critical in music, but in the microbe world, it's important to see how these things move because they're so unique. It's part of understanding the character of the creature, I guess. Yeah.
So how did
It
you?
was iPhone, and then I started investing in I think I got an app there, or starting to use an app, so I had more control over the settings, etc., to get better images. But then it was basically it was DaVinci Resolve that was handling the editing and making the iPhone images really pop, because without DaVinci, none of the iPhone images look as good as they do on YouTube. It's DaVinci that did that. So.
So how did the relationship with Blackmagic start, and how has that changed how you go about doing your work now?
Okay, well, Blackmagic, my first contact with Blackmagic products was when I was doing some engineering work with a mate in Sydney at the basement, sort of towards the end there, and I was doing the live audio mix, which came from a separate MADI connection from the gig downstairs, a separate mix from the live guy in the venue, and there were Blackmagic cameras around the venue, pointed at the stage and different parts of the crowd. It was a visual team, and we had a gopher that would go down to the studio and just fix things up with cameras and microphones and stuff. So I handled the mix. So I did the separate mix, which fed to the little Blackmagic boxes that went out to the internet via YouTube. So that was my first exposure, but I was handling the audio, so I wasn't actually using the visual side of things. But it was the colleague that I was working with. He, when I came to the microscope, he said, "Well, have you thought about Blackmagic?" I went, "Oh yeah," and started looking into it, and spent a good year and a half before I made a decision about what to do, because it's quite an investment. So and it just came down to really, it just was Blackmagic just kept standing out. The more I learned about the company, and it just made clear sense. It wasn't a case of choice. It was just like, well, it was clearly the path forward.
Yeah. So Fabian, if people want to view your work, where can they go to view your work, and what are your plans for the future?
At the moment, I've just got a YouTube channel, which was a way to be able to present it to the public on a global platform without it costing me money. Unfortunately, I have to put up with a few ads on there. Sorry. But yeah, so I'm just using YouTube for now. Hopefully one day I'll have a proper website, all that happening for now, but it's just going through its growing stages, teething stages, and trying to figure out formulas and ways to go about things. I've got a lot of ideas. That's just a case of putting them into practice. But like all things, it takes time and money, and both are in a short supply. So, yeah, it's progressing slowly, and it's going well. Big plans, but chipping away at it bit by bit as I go. But then bring other colleagues on board to help with the filming, etc. So I'll have a global network is what I'd like, just a couple of us spread across the world, and we can pool all our footage and grow the thing, and then eventually it'll turn into a documentary style, more informative.
Definitely. Well, mate, the work that you're doing is absolutely amazing. I'm sure a lot of our listeners are going to love exploring it now that they've been able to hear about it. So thank you so much for taking the time to chat to us today. It's been an honor having you on the show, and we can't wait to see how your work grows over the years.